So the time has come to, I guess, just talk about the Utah Jazz Summer League roster once again. I thought about doing a live stream, but I felt like doing it long form would be a little bit more comfortable, and I know there's some volume issues when I do live streams. So this time around, we're going to focus on another person who obviously can't be sat during the, you know, entire process of the Summer League, despite his, like, honestly, historically great performance. I believe at the moment he should be leading all Summer League players in scoring. Kyle Filipowski, the man who fell in the draft to us at pick 32 last season because of a scandal that had nothing to do with him as a player or his actions personally off the court. But he fell. The Jazz didn't have to move up for him, and they got a stellar person as a result. Now, obviously, last year, the conversations that I mostly had were about him obviously being offensively competent, his brain being wired a little bit differently than most bigs when it came to the offensive side of the ball. It's almost, and honestly, watching the Summer League really just puts it like on steroids, if you will, because the biggest thing that I recognize is he plays the sets out as if he's, a power forward, a center. But then at certain points, when things aren't happening on offense like they should be, or he goes for a DHO and the ball gets denied, and there's just a huge gap between him, the big, and there's no backline help at the rim, he's like, wait a second, I can put the ball on the deck, silly. And then he just drives to the rim. And it's little stuff where he makes the quick read where he says, okay, I'm in the flow of the offense. It's not working what we're about to do. I see what's about to happen, and I see a way that I can exploit it. Let me just exploit it. And he just goes through those processes like mentally by himself. And the ability of a big to kind of have small forward-esque instincts while also having the limber and wiggle to actually put the ball on the deck and effectively drop his shoulder to get himself into a favorable position is also something that can't just be understated. Obviously, we had in the most recent game, Cody Williams played a large chunk of minutes. I want to say he was a second leading person when it came to minutes, but he shot 4 of 13 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, 1 of 3 from the free throw line. Not his finest performance, but he did have 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. 4 assists and 3 steals. So he's developing, obviously not as impressively as a Bryce Sensabaugh or as a Kyle Filipowski, or arguably as much as an Isaiah Collier, but he's still making progressive steps forward, if that makes sense. Somebody that I feel should have played in this summer league that didn't was Keonte George. Now, I understand it's not popular to have certain types of players or certain players that have played a certain number of minutes on your main roster to, be playing in the summer league. But to me, he hasn't proven his efficiency enough. I saw a post where somebody said, Jazz fans need to stop acting like Keonte George isn't an NBA player. And I read it again because I thought it was satirical. It wasn't. I went to the comment section and it just didn't make sense to me. Nobody's saying that Keonte George isn't a NBA caliber player. The talent is clearly there. The shot motion is clearly there. He just doesn't hit his shots, right? And he's not a defensive ace. He's not an elite playmaker, though he has made strides on that side of his game. The fact of the matter is, if I put you on the court and you're shooting this relatively the same numbers as Jordan Clarkson was last year, albeit probably like just under league average from 3-point range, but you're shooting mostly threes, brother, I can only play you but so much. It doesn't matter how much I see and want to see some upside and see some positives in you and in your game. There's a limit to how far I can push my delusions. So we're not sitting here saying that Keonte George, isn't a player that deserves the opportunity to play in games or doesn't deserve the opportunity to showcase how great he is as a player. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying the way these newer guys are coming in, they're putting a lot of pressure on him to show what he is. Kyle Filipowski's, I don't expect him to go into the regular season and have the opportunities that he's had in the summer league. But you can best believe, based on the way he performed last season when he was getting spot minutes and then when he was in the regular rotation, he's going to not regress, right? And a not regressing Kyle Filipowski is already more efficient than Keonte George, who's going into year 3. So Keonte needs to take that step forward. He needs to be better. There's not going to be an excuse. There's not going to be a cop-out for him. You could look at Taylor Hendricks and say, okay, if Taylor Hendricks doesn't have a great season, we're going to blame it on his leg, right? To a certain extent, right? Him trying to get his legs back under him, this, that, and the third. But if he shoots abhorrently enough, we're going to have questions. If he can't rotate properly on the perimeter like he used to be able to, we're going to have questions. If he's not going to be a great help side rim protector, or he's not going to be able to play passing lanes the way that he used to, we're going to have some questions. So yes, I'm going to have it about Keonte George because everybody thrust him into our eyes and said, look at this. Look at my new toy. He's so awesome. And it was like Rocco from Sesame Street. Like you're waiting for it to do something or talk, and it, like every now and then it shakes a little bit, but it's not a stone golem in Minecraft. Granted, I'm not a Keonte George hater. I don't want it to come across that way. But there's going to be a lot of pressure on him this year to produce something. I'm not saying he can't have dry spells. I'm not saying he can't have poor shooting nights. That's going to happen. It's a guarantee, right? But he has to be more efficient overall. I can't watch him for another season shoot under 42% from the field and shoot under league average from three-point range. And then also shooting like 12, 13, 14 shots a night. That's not going to happen. And later on in the season, the question of him being able to potentially play point guard was answered because Isaiah Collier said, hey man, you can't hit shots. I can't hit threes, but I can play make. And then he never looked back. Granted, Isaiah Collier in this game regressed a little bit. 5 of 17 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, 1 of 3 from the free throw line. He did have 3 rebounds, 12 assists. He also ended up having 1 block and only 3 turnovers. So much better. 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio is always something that we're going to be proud of, especially for him because we, wish the best for him and we want to see him take that step forward. We didn't end up seeing what's his name? Oh, his jumper is so pretty. Junior. Oh my goodness, I'm so bad at this. Well, to be fair, we didn't see either of our first round draft pick rookies. But both of them had stellar showings. Obviously, Ace Bailey had a first game rocker that was a little bit rough. But overall, you saw that he just needed to get his feet wet. He just needed to get prepped. He just needed to get into game speed mode. And then in the second game, he just cut up. So I have no reason to believe that either of our first-round draft picks will end up struggling coming into this season. Now, there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period, of course. But I don't think that they're going... I think this is probably the best shooting rookie class that we've had in recent memory. Even if we're going to include Tanji. Now, he finally played, before I think they said it was an ankle injury or something with his a lower body extremity issue. But he played 23 minutes, got a start that night. 5 of 9 from the field, 4 of 7 from three-point range, which is really, really nice to see. The way the shot motion went, the confidence that he shot it with, the poise that he took it with, and the way he held it when the ball was in the air, just knowing it was going to go in was something to be impressed about. 2 of 4 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal. I mean, for a guy that finally got the opportunity to play in summer league action, you would have thought he should have been in the rotation the entire time. Now, obviously, there were other things at play, but you can believe that despite him being a second-round pick, coming into the season, he could see a couple minutes, especially when we start getting into the tank-heavy games or when somebody, mysteriously gets injured. You could definitely see him playing some more serious minutes. Now, this was a game where obviously you saw a lot more guys that don't usually play get the opportunity to get some minutes. You saw the usual candidates of Max Abmas, and then you saw Elijah Harkless get his second start this summer league. Harkless, again, put up a stinker offensively at least. 4 of 12 from the field, 2 of 7 from 3. He was 6 of 8 from the free throw line, though. Had 7 rebounds, a steal, a block. A steal, a block, and 1 assist. So defensively, Harkless isn't bad. Offensively, the energy isn't bad. It's just his shot doesn't fall. So in a way, he's not like Keonte George, but they're a lot more similar than any other 2 players that I would on the roster right now that I would pair if I was going to do with those 2 individuals. Obviously, like I said, Kyle Filipowski knocked it out the park. 11 of 19 from the field, right? Took the most shots in this game, only by 2 over Isaiah Collier, who was shooting 29.5% from the field. But Kyle Filipowski shot 58% from the field. He was also 5 of 8 from three-point range. The jumper is jumping. I take that back. That was corny. But 8 of 12 from the free throw line. He also ended up having 11 rebounds, assists, a steal. Not as much of a playmaker in this one, obviously, but incredibly efficient offensively. And just the creativity, like I said before, that he plays with, and his ability to, like, when the brain's on and he's going through the motions of what he's supposed to do, and then recognizing what I'm supposed to do here will not yield us the best, will not give us the best opportunity to score, to get a bucket. Turn off the switch. I'm going to do it my way. The restraints are off. The cuffs are off. I'm dropping my gauntlets I'm dropping my weights like I'm Rock Lee, and I'm about to go crazy. And he's done it consistently. If he's not averaging 30, like a little over 30, he must be averaging like 29.8 or 29.7 points a game so far in the Summer League. And obviously, I was talking about how Bryce Sensabaugh was just phenomenal in his games, and eventually we needed to sit him. And we did shut him down for the Summer League because he was just like that. But there's no viable center candidate to put in place of Kyle Filipowski for the majority of minutes that we would really care to do. And since Kyle Filipowski probably in the regular season isn't going to see a tremendous amount of minutes, especially after Taylor Hendricks comes back, we're going to need to see as much of him and his growth right now and in the preseason, and then especially in those games before Taylor Hendricks returns from his rehab and whatnot. I think one thing that's going to be interesting for the Jazz going forward is going to be how this minute spread looks and who we decide to buy out / trade before the season starts or before the trade deadline. Because obviously we have still Kyle Anderson, we have Kevin Love, we have Nurkic. They just don't fit our timeline, and there's not very much of a benefit to having them on the roster. I mean, Kevin Love being the, 3-point marksman, kind of do-it-all kind of guy, one of the greatest accessory pieces in the league across his career, especially in his years with the Cavaliers. I could see a world where he serves as a mentor. I don't know if he wants to serve as a mentor, though. And he still has a little bit of juice left in the tank, so I think there's a contending team that would love to have him on the roster. Kyle Anderson, the man slow-mo himself, he has certain aspects of his game, and obviously being defensively versatile allows him to stay on the court a lot more than most people. So in a mentorship role, I could see him being very productive with a lot of these guys. But overall, like from a minute standpoint, you can make the argument that, they're at the very least, Kyle Anderson deserves some rotational minutes, or Kevin Love. I don't believe that. I don't think that somebody in the league offices could sit there and say, yeah, not only are the Jazz, do we know the Jazz are tanking, but we have essentially definitive proof because Yusuf Nurkic is better than Walker Kessler, Kyle Filipowski, Taylor Hendricks. There's no way that they could make that argument. So Yusuf Nurkic is the one guy that I think could potentially, if we had to, just sit on the roster for no real reason, like just to quite literally exist. But I do think that there's definitely one, maybe two buyouts on the horizon for the Jazz, and going forward, I see no reason to believe that we couldn't see a lot of positive development. Like last year, it was rough because even in games that we lost, there wasn't very much for us to learn. There weren't very many positives. Obviously, towards the end of the season, it got kind of interesting because you had Isaiah Collier busting out and showing his playmaking sense. And while he was very turnover prone, like there was still something to appreciate about the games that we watched him play. I think this year we're going to have a lot more opportunities to see different guys just have monster games. And it may not be, the most glorious thing in the world. And I don't think we're going to be the worst. I don't think we're going to have the worst record in the league this year, which might be a little bit of a hot take, especially with the Trailblazers' recent acquisitions, because they're kind of cooking right now. Who is it? Hansen? Is it James Hansen or Johan Hansen? The big from China. Watching his tape is just really nice. I'm not gonna lie. And people were talking about, it's so crazy that they sat there and drafted him when he was slated to go in the second round, when he has been playing professionally in China for a couple of years now, I'm pretty sure. And if you look back at that tape, I know most people don't watch CBA basketball, but they're really when you leave the US, I'm pretty sure they're the second, or they're like right there next to the EuroLeague when it comes to pay or play. So in order to pay your players a significant amount of money, you also have to have a lot of viewership, a lot of sales and stuff. So stands to reason that you might want to occasionally, if you happen to be searching on that side of the web, if you see some highlights, just turn the highlights on. And I don't want to sit there and call him great value Jokic, because I feel like that's kind of more of the Sabonis way of thinking of things. But he has some very similar mechanics. He has some very similar, decision-making skills. And I like the way that he plays. It is very pleasing to the eye for myself personally, and he doesn't really force much of anything. He's a lot more of a slower paced player, which is something that's gonna, I guess, affect the way people defend him and the way the Trailblazers' overall offense works. But across the board, I think that they're building something very nice out there. And obviously, the Spurs cannot be understated. Oh, that reminds me. Oh man, is it Carter? It has to be. Their second pick. It was like pick 14. He's just nice. A guy that can affect the game and play defense basically nonstop for extended periods of time, while making sure he is not a net negative offensively. It's not like he can't rebound. It's not like he can't swing the ball. It's not like he's a completely non-threat on offense, right? He's not Andre Roberson back in the OKC Thunder days when they had, KD and more so when they had Westbrook. He's a viable offensive threat, but he's also probably going to give you hell on defense first. You're going to feel him on that side of the ball. And because they have so many other guys, and you obviously have Dylan Harper as well being the headline of the draft class, I guess, for the Spurs, you add those two guys to Victor Wembanyama, Jeremy Sohan. You have, oh my goodness, me forgetting his name, Stephon Castle, right? And De'Aaron Fox is injured right now, but eventually a healthy De'Aaron Fox, under the assumption that they don't end up trading him or moving on from him, they're star-studded and they're young. And if you sat there and you said peak of the Thunder current roster or peak of the Spurs current roster with the guys that they just brought in, I'm picking the Spurs peak, because there's something about guys that'll just sit down and execute that just gets me going. Obviously, having certain players like your Jordan Poole archetypes or your combo guard type archetypes, the guys that'll just get freaky, get creative on offense when you need a spark plug off the bench, those guys are important. But also being able to have guys that no matter what can execute and will execute means a whole lot, because there's a lot of teams where, yes, you might have three guys that are always on the same page, always doing whatever the coach says, X, Y, and Z to the T. But then you might have two guys that will attempt to do it, but they're not very well versed or not very capable beyond a certain extent. So they're forced to freestyle outside of the overall scope and scheme of whatever the offense or whatever the defense is being required for them to do. The thing is, a lot of those people, when they freestyle, it doesn't work, or it doesn't work enough, which makes them look like a liability when they probably aren't as much of one as it makes them out to be. With the Spurs, they have the length, they have the intellect, they have the overall skill set, and they have the coaching staff and the culture to make sure these guys all get placed where they need to be placed. And when one guy makes a mistake, the communication, the talking is always there to keep everybody on the same page and get everybody where they need to be. And the Spurs scrambling on defense when they're in danger is magical, right? There's very few teams that do it very well. And the Thunder, obviously, of course, do things very well. But you can tell that the Thunder are more of a, this is obviously a joke and hyperbole, but more of a merry band of thieves kind of thing, like a merry band of pirates kind of thing. They're all guys that have fun and they all have their roles or whatever, but there's always going to be certain games where one guy just doesn't show up, where another guy does show up, where one guy has a really good game and another guy has a really good game, but the one guy that always has to have a good game is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. With the Spurs, I feel like everybody can eat, if that makes sense. Like, yes, at some point, Victor Wembanyama is going to be the star, the leader of this team. Like, everything that happens should go through Victor. But in order to avoid any potential, injuries long-term with him and anything of that nature, you're going to have also these other pieces where on any given possession, they can go get a bucket. They can go ahead and run a set that has very little to do with Victor. Victor can literally show and just be the poster boy that just like holds a sign of distraction across the front of it. And everybody's paying so much attention to him that everybody else who's arguably almost equally as talented, just not as physically gifted, can get off. And if you're the Utah Jazz, I think this year's draft class is the one that you really needed the most, arguably, because Ace Bailey looks like one of those ones, right? And obviously you added 2 shooters after that are pretty decent playmakers. They know how to swing the ball. It's one of those things where you feel like you needed that one guy, like that motor. And to me, I felt like Colin Sexton was more of a motor guy and like the motor that we had beforehand. And then you had Isaiah Collier, and he's a little feisty, and so they went back and forth last season. And it was nice to see because there was a lot of learning that was going on there. But I think coming into this year, you're going to see Ace Bailey, and yes, the whole narrative was he wants to make sure that he's the number one guy and this, that, and the third. And Lowry's going to be the number one guy. But at the same time, Lowry, in my eyes, is not a number one on a championship team. But he will, because I don't think in a game 6, game 7, Lowry, it will explode and give you 40, 42, right? When you need it most. But I think he will always consistently give you 23 to 28, maybe even 31 on a game. And that's really, really good. Lowry, to me, at his peak, like under the assumption that he doesn't really add like an insane dribble bag to his game, I think he's a very solid number 2. And if Lowry's your 3rd best player on your championship team, oh brother, you're having a ball. You're having a blast. What do you mean? What do you mean borderline 50, 40, 90 is your third best player? Crazy. And he's defensively competent. Now he's not locked down, right? And he does have, the lower back issues, and occasionally it'll be like a low leg injury or whatever. But for the most part, you got to love that. And if you have Ace Bailey, a guy who now Ace Bailey, I'm seeing more of what people say when they compare him to Anthony Edwards. Not in the fact that he plays the game similarly, but in his mentality and how his brain works. Because you see a certain level of, not just athleticism, but like energy and the way he thinks the game and the way he plays, where it just feels like he's not just out there playing for a check. He's not playing because he's good at basketball. He's playing because he just wants to beat you, like you guarding him. Like he sees a matchup, and I feel like he genuinely, somewhere in his head, he's sick. He's sick in the head, not bad sick in the head, like good sick in the head. Like he's hooper sick, like get a bucket sick in the head. Like he sees somebody and he genuinely thinks he can score on anybody, and that's the type of brain you need in somebody like that. Now he's gonna have some terrible shooting nights. I see it on the horizon, but he's also going to have some really, really nice ones. And when you see those and you see him go for 34, you see him go for 36, call me crazy. Call me crazy, at least you're calling. This season, Ace Bailey 40-point game. If he's given the opportunity and the shot attempts to do so, I think he will put 40 on the board at least once this year, maybe twice. Would I put money behind that take on him doing it once? Yes, I would. Because the way, the energy, the vibe, and then defensively, he has very active hands. Now, sometimes on drives, he does end up dropping his hands, so he needs to make sure he keeps those out. Obviously, we know he's athletic. He's not going to be able to block people the same way that he is in summer league or was in college at the NBA level, just because grown men doing grown men things, and they've been dealing with adequate 7-footers and 6'10" plus players and LeBrons, doing chase down blocks, keeping just going through the trees. So him coming out, he's probably going to be a little loose and wild defensively, but as he gets to rein it in, and obviously Will Hardy coaches them up and he leans on his veterans a little bit and he plays a lot more around Taylor Hendricks, I think that's going to be very interesting. In a 5-man lineup, if we have Ace Bailey and Taylor Hendricks on the same side of the floor, I feel like that's the side of the floor you don't want to push. I don't think you want to put the ball on that side of the floor unless you're like literally Kevin Durant or, just a premier scorer in the league. But even then, I don't think you want that matchup. I think you try and get a Walker Kessler. If Kyle Filipowski's on the floor, you definitely try and get Kyle Filipowski in that pick and roll. Granted, he's going to probably go under because he's more of a drop coverage kind of guy. So if you love 3-pointers, you're probably going to love that kind of matchup a little bit more. But across the board, I just really like this young class. Cody Williams, like I said, he hasn't been looking terrific, but he has been progressing, and that's something that I need to see. Isaiah Collier has had a few games where he's had high assists, low turnovers. It hasn't been, enough for me to say, oh yeah, the problem's solved, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. He's had a couple games where he shot really efficiently, but he also had a couple games like this one where he goes 5 for 17, and it's not what you were hoping to see. At the same time, though, I'm fairly confident that even though the Jazz will be bad this year, and obviously the tank is the expectation because you have the Boozer twins and you have AJ DeBasanya. I need to go over his tape a little bit more. Obviously, he's at BYU right now, so he's very close to home or potential home in the league. Adam Silver, make something shake since you made something shake for the Mavericks. But I think that we're going to see a very interesting season. I think the games are going to be fun to watch, which didn't really happen, like I said, especially early on last season, because the understanding that, yes, we want it to be bad. Yes, we want it to be terrible. And then you see a closing lineup that has Cody Williams in it and we're down 4. You're like, what is this? What is this? Because even though Cody Williams' brain is where it needs to be, his physical frame doesn't allow him to exert himself in the way that he recognizes he needs to. So a lot of times like that, just little things or certain lineups that got rolled out, you knew that there's no way Will Hardy doesn't know that this is not going to be a winning formula. You know that he knows. He kind of put something wicked out there. But you also recognize that because he knows that, and because him and his coaching staff are aware of that, there is a plan in place. Now, I'd like to believe, right, that Will Hardy is the coach of the future for the Utah Jazz. I have no doubt in my mind defensively he will have things going in order. And I know a lot of guys say that it's based on speculation and stuff, but it's also recognizing the way that he talks to the guys, the way he goes. He's been shown to break down film study, the way he talks in the locker room, the way the players speak about him, the way he handles the media. It's just little stuff like that. And yes, he is obviously a younger coach in the league, and that means that he's also going to be more willing to bend his rules. You have guys like your Doc Rivers where they're going to do, they're from that past time where they're going to keep doing whatever their scheme is. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work. They're going to keep doing it, planning on it working eventually. And that's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. And that's why you have younger coaches that are just taking the league by storm because they recognize, dang, this coverage isn't working. Dang, when we run these matchups, that's a terrible matchup. I might actually have to sit so-and-so. I don't want to, but the advanced analytics and the numbers and just watching it on the eye test, it's not working. And no matter how much I love him and believe in him or believe in the players and the collection that we have on the floor, it's not working. I, as a coach, have to take responsibility and make an alteration. The alteration may not work. There's going to be a lot of times, especially now, where coaches are blamed for losses because they make adjustments and the adjustments don't work. But at least they made an adjustment. At least they tried. And one thing that I think this tanking and this tankathon that has happened with the Jazz is going to allow for us to do is to see who every player is at their core. When there's nothing on the line in the game, how do you perform? When the game's tight, but we're still tanking, are you still going to try and win the game? Just a thought. When you have a shot that you just love to take, it's not a high percentage shot for you, but you love to take it. And then you see the shot and the shot comes to you, but there's a wide open man in the corner or there's somebody breaking free on the opposite wing. Are you going to throw the pass? Are you going to make the correct play over the play you want to make? Those are the questions. And also recognizing what the rotations could potentially look like going forward. I love the young collection of players that we have. And moving on from Colin Sexton, while I didn't want it to happen, I recognize why it did happen. And essentially with our second draft pick in the first round, drafting what I view to be a slightly younger, a little bit less athletic, a little bit more methodical version of Colin Sexton, who can also shoot the lights out as it is already. It makes sense. And you need more space for minutes. Obviously, Jordan Clarkson got bought out. He ended up joining the Knicks, and he's going to have a ball out there. I'm certainly sure. There's just a lot of times and a lot of opportunities for our guys to showcase who they are. And again, it's going to be a rocky year. It's going to be a tanking year. But it's also going to be one where every single game you learn something new about a new player. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing that really draws my interest. And I'm going to try and do live streams after every game. I don't know how well that'll work considering I work mostly nights. But I'll say probably 60 out of the 82 games, I'll probably be live afterwards. So, if you're still around then and, you subscribe to the channel and you like the content, by all means, first of all, if you made it this far in the video, you must have liked the video. So smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, become a member of the channel, help support the content. I appreciate you making it this far, and hopefully there will be much more positives to be seen in the upcoming days and heading into the season. Without any further ado, it's been fun. As always, good morning, good evening, and good night. No matter where you're on the globe watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you boys in the next one. Peace.